we are monitoring the White House press briefing where Karoline Leavitt has just begun speaking to reporters. Standing near her, you might notice that there's a seal on the podium, is Vice President J.D. Vance, a last-minute guest at the briefing, we just learned.
That's right. And he's a former senator, right? So that is not a coincidence, I think, because right now you have the ball is in the court of the Senate, and Republicans need Senate votes from Democrats. So now, no doubt he's going to have a message, I think, right, to some of his former compadres on this.
Absolutely. We have Ron Brownstein standing by watching this as we await the vice president's remarks. Something we've already heard from Karoline Leavitt, Ron, is the refrain from the White House and Republicans that Democrats, and it looks like he's about to step to the podium. So, Ron, please stand by. Let's listen into the vice president.
Who's watching at home. It's a tough act to follow, but let me just say a few things, and then I'll take a few questions. Number one, Democrats say that they care a lot about lowering health care costs, and yet when the president took historic action to work with the drug companies to lower prescription drug prices, the Democrats did nothing to help us. In fact, we would have loved to have the Democrats helping us, but they didn't. They talk about doing something. They don't actually do the hard work of making it happen. What they have done instead is to shut down the government because we won't give billions of dollars to health care funding for illegal aliens. That is what has actually happened. To the American people who are watching, the reason your government is shut down at this very minute is because, despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of congressional Republicans and even a few moderate Democrats supported opening the government, the Chuck Schumer AOC wing of the Democratic Party shut down the government because they said to us, we will open the government, but only if you give billions of dollars of funding for health care for illegal aliens. That's a ridiculous proposition. Let me say two other quick things, and then again, I'll take some questions. Number one, we all understand that Democrats and Republicans have policy disagreements. The Democrats want to do things. Look, when Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries were in here a couple of days ago, they made some suggestions that the president was more than happy to say, yes, let's sit down and talk about how we can solve the health care crisis that we inherited from the Biden administration. But it's one thing to say that we should solve the health care crisis for Americans. It's another thing to say that we're going to shut down the government unless we give the Democrats every single thing that they want, which, as Karoline says, includes giving billions of dollars of taxpayer funding for health care for illegal migrants. That's ridiculous. You don't have policy disagreements that serve as the basis for a government shutdown. Let's have the conversation about how to fix American health care, about how to make health care more accessible. As the president showed, he's more than willing to act on behalf of the American people for this very reason. What you don't do is say, unless you do exactly what we want to do as congressional Democrats, we're taken hostage. And the hostage, it turns out, is critical, essential services that the American people need. Karoline talked about some of it. Let me talk about some more. Our troops are not getting paid starting today because of the Chuck Schumer wing of the Democratic Party. We have people who require food assistance, low-income Americans who require food assistance, who will not get it unless we reopen the government, thanks to Chuck Schumer and his wing of the Democratic Party. We have flood insurance as we start hurricane season in the southeastern part of our country. That flood insurance is going to disappear because of Chuck Schumer and the far left of the Democratic Party. We need to reopen the government. Let's fix America's problems. Let's work together to solve them. But let's reopen the government before we have our negotiation about health care policy. That's what the American people demand, and that's certainly what the President of the United States wants. Let me make one final point. I think a lot of Americans are asking themselves, why did this happen? Why did the Democrats shut down the government despite, as Karoline said, voting on the exact same piece of legislation 6 months ago? And there are a lot of different spins that we can put on it, a lot of different answers that we could give, all of them true. One answer I already gave is that they want to give health care benefits to illegal aliens. That is true. They gave us legislative text that would have undone us cutting off health care benefits for illegal aliens. That's one of the things that they asked for. But the reality here, and let's be honest about the politics, is that Chuck Schumer is terrified she's going to get a primary challenge from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The reason why the American people's government is shut down is because Chuck Schumer is listening to the far left radicals in his own party because he's terrified of a primary challenge. So I'd invite Chuck Schumer to join the moderate Democrats and 52 Senate Republicans, do the right thing, open up the people's government, and then let's fix health care policy for the American people. Questions?
Mr. Vice President.
That's a lot. Matt Boyle.
Okay. Mr. Vice President, there's two key Democrat lies I would like to get your take on and see if you can address. The first is that you're seeing a number of top Democrat leaders, from Kamala Harris and Chuck Schumer to Hakeem Jeffries, claim that it is a Republican shutdown caused by Trump. The second is that they're out there now claiming that they don't want to give health care to illegal aliens. Can you address both of those lies from the Democrat Party?
Yeah, so on the point that it's a Republican shutdown, look, it's obviously a Democratic shutdown. Just look at the vote totals in the House, look at the vote totals in the Senate, and look at the President of the United States' own action and conduct throughout this crisis. Nearly every single House Republican voted to open the government, Matt. Nearly every single Senate Republican voted to open the government last night. And even to their credit, a few moderate Democrats voted to open the government. That's not a Republican shutdown when nearly every single Senate Democrat votes to shut it down and every Republican voted to open it up. It's just obviously not true. Now, you can disagree about a number of things, but you can't disagree about the obvious fact that Republicans voted to open the government. The president stands ready to sign that opening of the government. We just need a few more Democrats to join us in that effort to open the government. Your final question about illegal alien benefits. Look, the text is very clear. And I even saw, I think it was George Stephanopoulos in an interview with Mike Johnson, did a fact check that was totally rooted in baseless claims. It was basically Democrat propaganda. If you look at the legislative text that they gave us, they tried to turn on two separate provisions that would give health care benefits to illegal aliens. Number one, if you're an American citizen, you've been to a hospital in the last few years, you probably noticed that wait times are especially large, and very often somebody who's there in the emergency room waiting is an illegal alien, very often a person who can't even speak English. Why do those people get health care benefits at hospitals paid for by American citizens? The answer is a decision made by the Biden administration that the Trump administration, working with congressional Republicans, undid. We turned off that money spigot to health care funding for illegal aliens. The Democrats, in their legislative text, want to turn it back on. That's one thing. The second thing, Matt, is we all know that there are various ways in which the Biden administration waived away illegal immigration status. They gave parolees, they gave asylum claims to people who weren't really claiming asylum. And when they waved the magic wand of amnesty, giving millions of people legal status, even though they were in the country illegally, they also gave those people access to health care benefits. So what the Democrats are engaging in is a sleight of hand. They're saying, no. Those weren't illegal aliens who were getting health care benefits, even though everybody, knows they were in the country illegally. It's a lie told by the Democrats that they're not trying to give health care benefits to illegal aliens. It's a lie that is obviously untrue if you just look at the text that they gave us. And all you have to do is understand that this is about who benefits. We think the American people's government ought to benefit American citizens. The Democrats are willing to shut it down to benefit illegal aliens. The contrast couldn't be more clear. Peter.
Thank you, Vice President Vance. The big holdup is, of course, that you guys say illegal immigrants are getting taxpayer-funded health care. Democrats say you're lying. That makes it feel like it could be a really long shutdown. Is this going to be a long shutdown?
You know, I don't know. I can't predict what congressional Democrats are going to do, Peter, but I actually don't think it's going to be that long of a shutdown. This is a pure guess from the Vice President of the United States because I think you already saw some evidence that moderate Democrats are cracking a little bit. They understand the fundamental illogic of this. Look, for years, every single one of us, we can remember Barack Obama on the White House lawn. We can remember Chuck Schumer. We can remember, Nancy Pelosi for years. In Chuck Schumer's case, for literally decades, we've heard them say, you don't shut the government down over a policy disagreement. Okay, Republicans think this thing about health care, that thing about health care. Democrats think this thing about immigration. Republicans disagree. Whatever those disagreements are, you don't shut down the government over it. For the first time since the Democrats have been in politics, they're now saying that unless we get every policy item that we demand, we're going to shut down the people's government. They're trying to take a hostage, and we're not going to let them.
And the administration announced today that $18 billion bound for New York transportation projects is going to be frozen so it can't go to DEI programs there. But the timing of this, does announcing that today mean that you guys are going to squeeze Chuck Schumer's home state until he blinks?
Look, I haven't talked to Russ about this morning, but look, I'm sure that Russ is heartbroken about the fact that he is unable to give certain things to certain constituencies We want to do everything that we can to help the American people, but when the Democrats shut down the government, we have to actually do a little triage to make sure the most critical and most essential services are provided. The government does a lot of things. Of course, Republicans think that the federal government probably does too much, but there are a lot of critical things the federal government does that absolutely all of us would agree need to do. Our troops need to get paid. Our air traffic controllers need to make sure that people are flying safely and on time. We need low-income people to be able to access the food services that are provided by the federal government. There are critical things that need to be saved. We're going to do everything that we can over the coming weeks, if the shutdown lasts that long, to ensure that people get the essential services that they need, despite the fact that Chuck Schumer has shut down the federal government. It's not going to be perfect because we are in a government shutdown. We are going to have to lay some people off if the shutdown continues. We don't like that. We don't necessarily want to do it, but we're going to do what we have to keep the American people's essential services continuing to run.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, and thank you for being here. Yesterday, President Trump said, as a result of the shutdown, we'll be laying off a lot of people that are going to be very affected, and the Democrats, they are going to be Democrats. Has the administration asked agencies to target federal workers who they believe to be Democrats in these reductions of forces?
We're not targeting federal agencies based on politics. We're targeting the people's government so that as much as possible of the essential services can continue to function. That is the question the president has asked the entire government, is fundamentally, okay, we're in a shutdown. That causes some problems. The troops aren't getting paid. There's nothing that we can do about that while the government is shut down. But there are essential services that we want to make sure as much as possible they still continue to function. That is the principle that's driving us forward during this shutdown. It's going to continue to be the principle that drives us forward. But let's be honest. If this thing drags on for another few days or, God forbid, another few weeks, we are going to have to lay people off. We're going to have to save money in some places so the essential services don't get turned off in other places. That is the reality of the government shutdown that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have foisted upon the administration.
So what did
Phil.
he mean by they're going to be Democrats? He said they're going to be
President.
Democrats.
You've laid out a lot of the pain and problems that would come with a Democratic shutdown, and yet in the Oval Office yesterday, the president said that a lot of good could come from a shutdown. So square that circle. Which is it, a Democratic-caused crisis or a Republican opportunity for reform?
Well, I think all the president is saying, Phil, is that he wants to make sure the American people's government functions as well as it can, despite the fact that we're in a shutdown. We're going to have to make things work. And that means that we're going to have to triage some certain things. That means certain people are going to have to get laid off. And we're going to try to make sure that the American people suffer as little as possible from this shutdown. That's what the president is saying, is that, yes, this is a bad thing. Obviously, the president is trying to reopen the government, but we're going to make things work as well as we possibly can, given the constraints that we have.
And then on those policy differences for the discussion and the negotiations to come later, during the Biden administration, Democrats twice voted to expand these Affordable Care Act tax credits, but those were supposed to be temporary and they were slated to expire at the end of the year. As you sort of crack the door open to negotiation at a later date, would the party that ran on defunding Obamacare really negotiate about potentially expanding Obamacare?
Well, Phil, what we've said to the Democrats is that we're willing to have a conversation about how to ensure that Americans continue to have access to health care. And frankly, they should have access to better health care at a lower cost. We inherited a mess of a health care system from the Biden administration. It's why the president has worked so hard on the most favored nation status for prescription drugs. It's why we care so much about lowering the cost of prescriptions and why we're doing everything else. We're willing to have that conversation. But I think it's important to bracket the health care policy conversation because it's separate from the government shutdown. We think that we can open the government and then have the conversation about what best healthcare policy to fit the needs of the American people. That's all we're trying to do. That's all we're trying to accomplish. We've got to reopen the government first. Now, Caroline, I don't know how you do this, how you actually choose people, because I don't know 90% of the names in here. Is it just who's the best dressed? Okay, I really like your shirt. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. You are president of the Senate. Can you talk about what you're doing, what the administration is doing to try to get other Senate Democrats to vote to open the government?
Yeah, we're talking to a number of our colleagues, Democratic and Republican, in the Senate. I talked to a number of them last night. The president, of course, is talking to them as well. I think there really are two categories of demands that I've seen privately from congressional Democrats. I think on the one hand, those who are negotiating in good faith are saying, look, we just want to make sure that we're able to have a conversation with the administration about some of the critical needs that we see that need to get fixed over the next few months. We recognize it's kind of absurd, and a lot of them will admit in private that it's kind of absurd to shut down the people's government over these disagreements, but just agree to negotiate with us in good faith on these issues. And of course, we're having that conversation with them. Then there's another category, people who say, give us everything we want or we're going to keep the government shut down. We just write those people off because they're not negotiating in good faith. And frankly, we don't need them. We've already got 3 more Democrats last night than I thought we would get. And I think it's because they recognize the illogic of the position of taking the entire American economy hostage because they don't get their policy priorities. So 3 moderate Democrats joined 52 Republicans last night. We need 5 more in order to reopen the government. And that's really where we're going to focus, is how to get those 5 additional Democrats.
Thanks, Mr. Vice President. First 2 questions. Are there plans to meet Democratic leaders again in the coming days, or are you planning on plucking out senators one by one?
So that's the whole question?
No, I got a second part.
Okay, go ahead and ask the second question.
So the president's been posting some images of Leader Jeffries and Senator Schumer.
I saw.
Recently. You've said that you're interested in good faith negotiations with these leaders, but what message does that send? Is it helpful to post pictures of Leader Jeffries in a sombrero if you're trying to have good faith talks with him?
Oh, I think it's funny. The president's joking, and we're having a good time. You can negotiate in good faith while also poking a little bit of fun at some of the absurdities of the Democrats' positions, and even, poking some fun at the absurdity of the Democrats themselves. I mean, I'll tell Hakeem Jeffries right now, I make this solemn promise to you that if you help us reopen the government, the sombrero memes will stop. And I've talked to the President of the United States about that. Now, to your first question, are we negotiating one-on-one? Are we negotiating in groups? Look, I will go to the U.S. Capitol right now and meet with Chuck Schumer or any Senate Democrat if it helps us reopen the government. Most of the conversations, in my experience at least, have been one-off. We're also, of course, relying on some of our Senate Republican colleagues who have good relationships across the aisle. We're going to do whatever we have to do is the answer. And I think it's tough to predict what shape this negotiation is going to take over the next few months. But I feel good about the fact that Democrats already realize privately the fundamental irrationality of their position. I hope that they're going to publicly acknowledge it and reopen the government. Right in the back, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. You responded to a post on X of Chuck Schumer on the House floor back in 1996, railing against illegal immigrants receiving taxpayer-funded benefits. You said Chuck Schumer once recognized that it was disastrous to give illegal aliens rewards for breaking the law. Now he wants to shut down the government unless we reward illegal aliens for breaking the law. Why has Chuck Schumer changed his stance?
That's a good question. Actually, it's a very tough question. Asking me to get in the head of Chuck Schumer is not a place I particularly want to be, but my basic read on it is that the entire Democratic Party, the political leadership, not every Democrat nationwide, but the political leadership of their party has got it into their heads that the only way to be compassionate is to be compassionate to illegal aliens rather than American citizens. If you go back to what Bill Clinton was saying, even Barack Obama in some cases, what he was saying about illegal immigration 10, 15, 20 years ago, you would put them on the MAGA right based purely on their rhetoric around illegal immigration. So I don't know why they've gone so far to the left. I think it's bad for the country. I think it's bad for them politically. But our principle, all I can do is speak for the president that I serve and the country, the administration that I serve right now. We believe that the American people's government exists for the American people. That means the people who have the legal right to be here, and that's why we're fighting to reopen the government. And unfortunately, the Democrats are fighting to shut it down for the benefit of illegal aliens. And I'll take a couple more, and then I'll let Caroline, I'll go back to my day job so Caroline can go back to hers. All right, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Just going back to the sombrero, you said that the president is joking, but Hakeem Jeffries says that these memes were racist. What's your response to that? And just if I may briefly go off topic, Secretary Hegseth yesterday made an edict about no more beardos in the military. Just wondered what...
Sorry, what did he say?
No more beardos Beard. Oh, sorry, it's my accent. Just wanted your response to that.
I didn't see that particular comment. I thought Pete gave a hell of a speech, and a speech that really is just oriented around returning the American military to the very high standards that it has had for virtually its entire history until Joe Biden came along and decided to lower standards. I think it was bad for our military, and it was bad for our troops. When I was a young United States Marine, I did not have a beard. I am now the vice president, so I get to do what I want to do. But I think Pete's trying to re-implement high standards, and that's a very good thing. On the sombrero thing, I mean, Hakeem Jeffries said it was racist, and I know that he said that, and I honestly don't even know what that means. Like, is he a Mexican American that is offended by having a sombrero meme? I mean, I saw one of the major TV stations put the meme up and then say, this is AI generated. And he had like the curly animated mustache too. It's like, do you really not realize the American people recognize that he did not actually come to the White House wearing a sombrero and a black curly animation mustache? Like, give the country a little bit of credit. We're all trying to do a very important job for the American people. The President of the United States likes to have a little bit of fun when he's doing it, and I think that's okay. I'll take one more question.
Mr. Vice President, in every previous shutdown, workers have been furloughed, not laid off. So why does the president want to fire some workers and not just furlough them? Why is this shutdown any different?
Well, first of all, we haven't made any final decisions about what we're going to do with certain workers. What we're saying is that we might have to take extraordinary steps, especially the longer this goes on. We're going to have to take extraordinary measures to ensure the people's government operates, again, not perfectly, because it's not going to operate perfectly in the midst of a shutdown, but operate as well as it possibly can. And I think that the Democrats, if they're so worried about the effect this is having on the American people, and they should be, what they should do is reopen the government, not complain about how we respond to the fact that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have shut down the government in the first place. Thank you all.
Also
Caroline.
going to target some benefits, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you. See you guys.
All right, guys.
We've been listening to Vice President J.D. Vance from the podium in the press room. We'll continue to monitor today's press briefing. Let's get straight to CNN's Manu Raju, who has been tracking the latest on the shutdown from Capitol Hill. A lot of what we heard there from the Vice President, Manu, centered on this disagreement between Democrats and Republicans over exactly what this shutdown is about and who Democrats are trying to restore access to ACA subsidies to. The administration says that they're trying to give these subsidies to undocumented immigrants. Democrats make the argument that these are folks who have a lawful presence in this country and they should continue getting these benefits. What did you make from the vice president there?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is always a little bit more complicated, because what the Democrats are calling for is to essentially reverse the cuts, the Medicaid cuts that were included as part of President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And as part of that law, it narrows the eligibility for people who to receive those Medicaid benefits. It goes and prohibits explicitly undocumented immigrants from accessing those benefits. And by pushing to reverse that language, to expand the eligibility of sorts, Republicans are arguing, well, they're trying to open the door for undocumented immigrants to get these benefits. Democrats say it's already prohibited currently under federal law that undocumented immigrants can get these benefits. Republicans say these restrictions are necessary to ensure that there's no fraud or abuse of the program, but therein lies part of the debate. The Democrats are also pushing for this extension of federal subsidies to the Obamacare program, which is expiring at the end of the year for individuals who are getting that health insurance under the Affordable Care Act. But what you heard from the vice president right there is what we are hearing on Capitol Hill from Republican leaders, that they do not plan to have any negotiations over those issues until the government is reopened. They say reopen the government now over the next 7 weeks, and then we can talk over those issues. Democrats, on the other hand, are saying we need to have the negotiation now before we agree to move ahead. And what we just saw on the Senate floor just moments ago was the fact that Democrats right now are sticking by their position. They just voted down for the third time the Republican plan to reopen the government. The vote was 55-45. Three Democratic senators, the same three Democratic senators who voted for the plan yesterday, voted for the plan today. There have not been any additional Democratic defections, but that is the big question here, guys. As the pressure builds, particularly on some of those members who represent federal workers and who are more moderate or swing state senators, will they buckle? Will they join Republicans to vote for this plan? That's the calculation of Republican leaders. Put the bill on the floor, force Democrats to cave, but for now, they're holding the line and the government is still shut down.
Yeah,
guys.
it'll get tougher as time goes on. Daniel Dale, fact check what you heard.
Continues to attempt to justify the claim that Democrats are pushing for free health care for illegal aliens, illegal immigrants, by citing the fact that you can encounter undocumented people in hospital emergency rooms. And he keeps suggesting that this was some decision of the Biden administration to provide these emergency services to undocumented people. In fact, that is not the case. This has been a policy of the U.S. federal government for decades, that hospitals are required to provide emergency care to whoever turns up there, regardless of immigration status, regardless of their insurance status. Now, Trump's one big beautiful bill reduced the federal funding match for hospitals associated with this care. So reduced federal reimbursement to hospitals, did not do anything to reduce money given to undocumented people themselves, because they are not given the money, they're given those services. Now, the Democrats' proposal is to reverse this reduction in the hospital funding match, but it also would not put money in the pocket of undocumented people. So the suggestion that President Biden decided to give emergency hospital care to undocumented people, the Democrats are now trying to, create or continue such a situation, that Trump ended it. All of that is not true. This is long-standing policy. Trump reduced the hospital match. Democrats are trying to restore the hospital match. This is not money in illegal immigrants' pockets.
Let's go to Ron Brownstein now, who has been patiently awaiting a question since before the vice president started speaking. Ron, specifically on J.D. Vance making the claim that the administration can't help but fire federal workers rather than furlough them. I mean, Republicans are arguing that by forcing this shutdown, Chuck Schumer's handing the keys and the pocketbook of the country to OMB and to the president.
Yeah, well, look, this was the argument that, persuaded Schumer in the spring not to shut down the government, that Trump would do things that we haven't seen from other presidents in terms of trying to use this to fire large numbers of people or shutter programs. But Democrats, I think, in general, are in a stronger position here than on many other issues. I mean, if you look at the big issues that Americans are concerned about, healthcare is probably the only one in the top tier that in polls people say they trust Democrats more than Republicans. The specific cuts in the One Big Beautiful Bill and the prospect of ending those ACA subsidies are extremely unpopular. And in polling, consistently, including polling done by Tony Fabrizio, who was Trump's principal pollster in 24. And contrary to what the vice president was saying, I mean, the people who are most at risk from, in particular, the ACA subsidies are in red states. I mean, that's where it has been picked up the most, in places like Texas and Florida and Georgia that did not expand Medicaid. So if the ACA subsidies are allowed to expire, there are a lot of Republican voters who are going to be in the 4 million to 5 million people losing coverage, 20 million facing higher premiums. So there is real pain. And I think in the end, there are enough Republicans in Congress who probably want to find a way to extend those subsidies that you can imagine a way out of this. The history, Boris, is that, shutdowns have not usually worked to force the White House to accept the demands of the other side. But in this case, I think there's a lot of commonality of interest in finding a way out, because Republicans recognize that what Democrats are demanding in many ways would help a lot of their own voters as well.
Yeah, may be popular. And yet, Manu, going back to our youth covering the Hill, if past is prologue, the shoe is kind of on the other foot here, right? Now you're hearing the vice president warning of the perils of a government shutdown. Troops will not be paid, disaster funds, when traditionally this has been the move of Republicans. And then you have Democrats saying it's okay now, right? For this reason that they are presenting, when the line from them has normally been, it's not okay. I mean, how do voters kind of look at that?
Yeah, I mean, look, once people start feeling the impact of this, that is going to be the ultimate question, is how the senators will respond. Do they start to pressure Democrats to say, look, we can worry about these issues later. We need our government services restored, or we can't be laid off or deal with the ramifications of being furloughed and not getting paid. Those are all big questions. The question right now is when those federal layoffs may ultimately occur. We're hearing from the vice president right there that he said that the layoffs will happen. That's what he told them. We're getting word also from the White House budget director that those are the message that he's also conveying to members on Capitol Hill. The question is how some of the Republicans may ultimately deal with that as well. I put that question to Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota about whether he supports this issue of firing federal workers as the administration is suggesting a move ahead with, and he said that that could be a problem politically. There could be political backlash, and it could also hurt their ability to get Republicans on board to stay with the administration's position as the shutdown drags on. So this is going to become a complicated calculation for both sides. If the administration goes this extra step of firing federal workers, how do Republicans respond up here? And what do Democrats say once their constituents are saying, we got to reopen the government, let's put these other issues aside, focus on just voting yes right now? Those are going to be the big questions as this drags on in the days ahead.
And as we were speaking, Manu, we got word that there is a bipartisan group of senators right now engaged in some informal conversations to try to explore options at ending the shutdown. It involves Republican Senator Mike Rounds and Senator Peter Welch. So we'll see if that goes anywhere. Manu Raju, Daniel
and just
Dale,
very
Ron
quickly,
Brownstein.
just very quickly, and just very quickly on that, that's very early in the negotiations.
Yeah.
In fact, the Republican leader, John Thune, threw cold water on that. So we'll see if that actually materializes into something.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it. Manu, Daniel Dale, Ron Brownstein, appreciate you all.